And a chance now to talk some racing. Not one driver, two drivers in the house. Graham Rahal, Courtney Force alongside, both headed to Gateway Motorsports Park. We'll start with Graham because his race is coming up real soon. We've got the Bommarito Automotive 500. Give me an idea. We talk in St. Louis about the buzz with this event. How about in your world? What have you heard? And what kind of buzz or carryover was there from last year?
Well, I think last year made a heck of an impression. I know that everybody was pretty blown away with not only the crowd, but, just the promotions that were behind it. Curtis and his team have done an amazing job. Chris Blair, who I've known for a lot of years. The crowd was unreal, standing on the grid, before the race, looking up, continuing to fill up more and more by the second. It was tremendous, and so I know a lot of people are excited to come back. We've in IndyCar, we've got new cars this year. It's a whole new look. I think it's going to highlight, this track even better. There'll be more passing, better performance. So I think everybody's, and right now we're in crunch time. There's 4 races left in our schedule. When we leave St. Louis, there'll only be 2 races. And so a lot of guys are trying to make moves. End of the year, you got to make an impression.
And Courtney, you're coming back in September. The NHRA is going to be at Gateway. How about your trip? I'm sure probably for years your dad is John Force. Folks know that. But were you coming there even as a young kid before you started racing?
Yeah, this is a track that's always been a lot of fun for me to come to. Growing up watching my dad compete in the funny car category, and now, this is going to be the second race in our countdown to the championship for the AAA Insurance Midwest Nationals over at Gateway. So I'm looking forward to it. Right now, our Advanced Auto Parts team is leading the points, but we're going to have to make some big strides when we get into the countdown. So it's going to be a really exciting race, not only for our teams, but I think for all the fans as well.
So not only do we have 2 drivers here with great last names, for those who don't know, they're also married. They're saying, boy, Martin does awkward interviews. He puts the 2 of them together. How did you guys meet? Tell me your story.
Well, we met at a racetrack.
I would have guessed that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he came out to watch my race. I actually invited him out. I said, if there's ever an event you wanted to come to watch an NHRA drag race, let me know. I'll get you tickets. And, a few, I think, weeks or a month later, he texted me and said, my brother and I would like to come out to the Chicago race. So that was the first race he came out to, and I met him there.
Did either of your parents say, oh, don't do it, go to law school, do something else? What kind of advice did you get from Dad growing up?
Well, my dad, he always complained he wanted sons, and he ended up with all girls. So I think he was a little surprised that any of us had an interest in it. He always says that of any of his daughters, he thought that I would follow in his footsteps. So I don't think he was too surprised. I was a little bit of a tomboy, and I liked, being out at the track, getting dirty, covered in grease, and helping the guys wipe down the body and the tires. And so I guess he wasn't as surprised when I had an interest in it. But, I think once he realized that I was committed to it and that's what I wanted to do, and I told him he couldn't retire until I got to compete against him in a funny car, that's when I feel like I had his support, and, he was there for me to kind of teach me the ropes.
Your dad won the Indy 500 before you were even born, so he's probably telling you, hey, listen to what Dad used to do. But as far as getting into it, was there advice?
My dad was kind of, I think my dad was very different. He was not so sure about any of his kids being involved at all in racing. In fact, I am the only one. Nobody else, none of my other family members work in the team or anything. So my dad was just very different. He knew that there'd be big shoes to fill. He didn't want that pressure upon his kids. And so when we were young, even me, and I was the same, I'd go to every race. I'd go to all the tests with my dad. My nickname was the Shadow. I followed him around constantly. But he was absolutely adamant that I do not race. Until I got a little bit older, I was 10, which I know sounds young, but in racing, that's considered, in our type of racing, old for starting now. I just was so persistent, and finally he just broke down. So, okay, look, if you get A's and B's through all of school, the moment you get a C, racing's done. And so I lived up to my end of it. He lived up to his, and we went racing.
So as a boss then, so your dad's kind of your bosses too. How does that dynamic work?
It's rough, for sure. It's great being in the family business, but my dad has a hard time finding that fine line between being a boss and being a father. It was really hard for me, like my rookie season, having to listen to my dad growing up and then getting into a career in a profession where you really have to suck it up and swallow your pride, and I do have to listen to him. He knows what he's talking about. He's a 16-time champ for a reason. And, you know, it's been a lot of fun. Now I get to compete against him in funny car, and he's kind of pulled the reins back, I think, a little bit. But it's great getting to work with him, having his support, getting, you know, advice from him. You'll see him, you know, duck under my funny car body, trying to give me last-minute advice before a run every weekend, really. But, no, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I learn a lot from him, and very lucky that I get to be out there racing with him.
And you not only have your dad, but one of your bosses, I guess, is David Letterman. Is that the right word, that he's one of your bosses?
It is. It is. He's certainly involved. I mean, Dave, he has a presence, and, you know, he hasn't come to a lot of races this year. He's been pretty busy still, you know, even though he's retired, but he's around. You know, I don't think there's a decision that's really made within the organization without his input like it should be. But yeah, I mean, you know, with my dad, I think, you know, it's always, like Courtney said, it's a hard, you've got to draw that line of family, you know, and personal life versus racing. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do sometimes. I mean, this is a business that can, you know, can take over. There's a lot of pressures, a lot of demands on him as a team owner to raise the sponsorship and the money to go racing, and a lot of, you know, demands on me to perform and to not only perform in the track but for our sponsors. So that's a difficult, you know, role and place to be in. But, you know, my dad and I have always been extremely close. So fortunately, every once in a while we can, you know, exchange words, but it goes away pretty quick.
The event itself, and I know Curtis Francois has talked a lot about this, they want it to be an event, not just a race.
Yeah.
And you have things leading up to it. We saw it recently with the PGA Championship where it sort of took over the town. What's your sense of the things that are happening at Gateway? And I know you like the track itself, but in terms of becoming an event.
Well, that's what you have to do. You know, at the end of the day, we go to a lot of different racetracks. But what makes a race special is when it becomes an event. So here, you know, you've got from 5 to 7 on Thursday, you've got the Ballpark Village, the Fan Fest going around. I always say, but the Ballpark Village, I've talked about a lot. It's like one of the coolest places I've ever been. So you're always going to have a good time there. You come to the race weekend, you know, on Saturday, you're going to have, before the race, Saturday night race, you're going to have DJs playing. You're going to have a lot of games out there for people to partake in. So those who want to come early. You know, Curtis is also, the guys have worked heavily to, you know, improve and increase the parking capacity, which was a little bit of an issue last year. That's been resolved. So, you know, they've done a really good job at making this something really special. And you know, we go to a lot of places. And I think that the one event that everybody talks about was here last year. It stood out, you know, to all the other drivers. It stood out to the team members. Everybody was shocked, you know, at the crowd that we had and the buzz that it had. And I know a lot of people are still coming in from out of town, as well as trying to maximize the people that are here. Come out and support it. I mean, you know, Curtis rescued this place, you know, a handful of years ago, and to see where it is today and the growth that it's experiencing, you know, I'm really, really excited for it.
All right, last question. When you're getting into a car, who drives? Oh, okay. Got a lead foot?
Sometimes. No. That depends. I got to drive last week in my Corvette. So.
Graham Rahal, Courtney Force with us. You can see both of them upcoming events at Gateway Motorsports Park.